October 4th, 1943, at the Reich Air Ministry in Berlin. The fancy oak meeting room grew quiet as Reich Marshal Hermann Göring gave his opinion to German airplane makers. His words were written down and would become one of history's most disastrous mistakes. "The Americans cannot build airplanes," he said. "They are very good at making refrigerators and razor blades." Through the tall windows of his office, the gathered factory owners could see smoke rising from Berlin's plants, which were working hard to replace the Air Force's losses. The Third Reich, although starting to suffer from losses at Stalingrad and in North Africa, still held power over most of Europe. In Göring's view, which was formed by old ideas from the 1920s, the United States was still a country of jazz players and shopkeepers, able to make everyday items, but not weapons of war. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you're tuning in from, and if stories of heroes appearing in the darkest hour thrill you, then hit subscribe. Because we're just getting started. What Göring did not realize was that, at that same moment, American shipyards were launching 3 large cargo ships every day. By the time his meeting was over, the Richmond shipyards by themselves would have finished another ship. In 6 months, those Americans who supposedly couldn't make airplanes would be sending raids of 1,000 bombers over Germany, while their shipyards put out a new cargo vessel every 8 hours. The math of Germany's defeat was being figured out not in war rooms, but in factory output numbers that would soon show the deadly false belief at the center of Nazi plans. Albert Speer had become the wonder worker of German war production. He took over weapons manufacturing on February 8, 1942, after Fritz Todt died in a strange plane crash. He had boosted German war output by 300% despite Allied bombing. Hitler called him a master organizer. Goebbels praised him as the man who made the unbelievable possible. At 39, he was the youngest official in the government, an architect who became a weapons genius, the expert who seemed to have beaten the laws of economics. His changes were groundbreaking for Germany. He brought in single-shift focused work, uniform parts, and cut down the number of airplane types from 42 to just 5 main ones. He took power from rival Nazi leaders, simplified paperwork, and used assembly line methods he had, ironically, learned from studying American car companies in the 1920s. By late 1943, Speer had good reason to feel sure of himself. German bullet and shell production had gone up 5 times. Tank making was 4 times higher. Airplane building had tripled. Even with the heavy bombing campaign turning German cities to ruins, his scattered factory system kept weapons flowing to the army. He had shown that logical planning could overcome a lack of materials, but in early 1944, reports started coming in that questioned this certainty. The numbers seemed unbelievable, the statements ridiculous. America, German false information insisted, was a country of jazz players and movie stars, made weak by different races living together and a slow government. How could such a nation make weapons in amounts that made what the whole German Reich produced look small? The realization started in January 1944, when German Air Force intelligence picked up and figured out American production reports meant for their Soviet allies through aid shipments. General Adolf Galland, the head inspector of fighter planes, would later talk about these discoveries with Speer in a series of meetings during 1944. According to the reports, the Americans said they had made 9,113 airplanes in December 1943 alone, almost equaling Germany's entire output for 3 months in just 1 month. Speer at first ignored the numbers as false information meant to discourage German intelligence. But proof arrived from many places. Spy photos from neutral Swedish businessmen showed line after line of B-24 Liberator bombers at Willow Run, Michigan. The Swedish source, a technical expert who had visited the plant before America joined the war, gave careful notes. "The factory is 2/3 of a mile long, a 1/4 mile wide," the report said. By April 1944, they will be making one finished 4-engine bomber every 63 minutes. They run 2 9-hour work periods, 6 days a week. Simple math showed nearly 650 bombers each month from this one plant. Speer looked at the photos with a special glass. The pictures showed not just finished airplanes, but the building process itself. A groundbreaking assembly line where the plane moved through set stations instead of workers moving to planes that didn't move. It was Henry Ford's car industry revolution used for airplanes. With the Abwehr being taken over by the SS in February 1944, Speer depended more and more on other sources of information. The job of figuring out American production fell to different sections in his office, working with what was left of Army information. Business owners from Switzerland who had business deals with American companies gave production numbers from yearly reports. Officials from Spain and Washington sent American papers that openly printed the production numbers. Traders from Portugal reported on American shipping they saw in Atlantic ports. The most important information came from Japanese Navy officials in Berlin. Throughout 1944, Japanese intelligence passed along information they got from their offices in Argentina and Chile. American airplanes were arriving in huge amounts at South American training camps. 500 airplanes per month to Brazil alone, just for training. The information from Sweden was very specific. Sweden's huge ball-bearing company, SKF, had plants in America and gave top managers from neutral Sweden visits to American plants. These managers, keeping Sweden's delicate position of not taking sides, passed reports to both sides. One report described the Pratt & Whitney engine factory in East Hartford, Connecticut. They make 1,000 engines every week. The testing areas run non-stop. The factory has 40,000 employees, including 11,000 females. The car lots hold about 15,000 cars, the workers' own cars. In his office in March 1944, Speer laid out the reports across his meeting table. His second-in-command for fighter planes, Carl Otto Sauer, stood next to him, checking the figures with an adding machine. "Let's believe these numbers are stretched by 50% for their false information," Speer said. "Even then," Sauer answered, "they would be making 48,000 airplanes a year, still more than everything we make." But the proof pointed to no stretching of the truth. American papers gotten through neutral offices openly printed their output numbers. The New York Times reported on Boeing's B-29 program without government control. Time magazine had articles about Willow Run with production numbers. Life magazine printed photos of assembly lines with serial numbers you could see, which German intelligence could follow. The discovery was deep. In Germany, output numbers were top secrets. Workers signed promises to die before telling. Factory locations were kept secret. America printed their production numbers in publications sold at places that sell papers. The file on Willow Run became key to figuring out American ability. Built by the Ford Car Company in 1941, the plant stood for everything German production was not. The main structure took up 3.5 million square feet, bigger than the whole Messerschmitt factory area at Augsburg. A Swedish technical expert, Per Jakobsson, who had visited Willow Run in late 1943, gave a careful report. The plant has 42,000 employees, including 35% women. Workers stay in one place while the airplane moves past them on a moving assembly line. The learning period for new employees is about 3 weeks. By April 1944, they are making 453 airplanes in 468 hours, one B-24 every 63 minutes. Speer looked at this next to German airplane making. The Messerschmitt Bf-109, Germany's main fighter plane, needed 4,000 work hours to make. Workers were expert craftsmen who put together whole parts. The learning period was about 6 months. At Willow Run, each B-24 needed about 1,225 work hours in the last stage of building. Even with it being a 4-engine bomber 5 times as heavy as a Bf-109, it needed much less work. Throughout 1944, Speer went to regular meetings with Hitler at different command centers. Each time he showed the American production information, Hitler's answer was the same, refusing to believe and making charges of negative talk. At a May meeting, Speer showed photo proof from Willow Run and output numbers from sources not taking sides. Hitler looked at the information for a short time. "False information," he said. "The Americans want us to accept these daydreams. No country can make airplanes like cars." "But that is exactly what they are doing," Speer stated. "They have used car assembly lines for making airplanes." "These reports are false stories told by Roosevelt," Hitler demanded, stopping the talk. But other people in the leadership were starting to see the truth. Field Marshal Erhard Milch, a government official in the Air Force office, admitted in private to Speer, The figures are right, aren't they? I believe they are on the low side, Speer answered. Then it's over for us, Milch said. Back in Berlin, Speer did a careful study of the two countries' production. According to the United States Strategic Bombing Survey, the numbers told a story that couldn't be denied. German airplane production in 1944, in its best month of July, was 419 airplanes. The best for fighters was 3,375 in September. The yearly total was 39,807 of all kinds. This included 25,285 fighters, 5,468 bombers, and 9,054 other types. American airplane production in 1944 had a monthly average of 8,000. The yearly total was 96,000, including about 16,000 large bombers, 35,000 fighters, and 45,000 trainers, transports, and other types. But the sheer numbers were only part of the picture. Each American B-24 Liberator had the hitting power of 2 German medium bombers, while needing proportionally less fuel, crew, and upkeep per ton of bombs dropped. The quality difference made the quantity difference even bigger. In the spring of 1944, intelligence showed another area of American superiority. Reports from Argentine sources gave details on American aluminum production, 420,000 tons a year. German aluminum production, even with control of Norwegian hydroelectric power, only reached 245,000 tons. Oil numbers were even more serious. American refineries made 4.7 million barrels a day. Germany, depending on synthetic fuel from coal, made the equal of 124,000 barrels a day. The Americans used more fuel in training flights than the entire German Air Force used in combat. Japanese military officials in Berlin shared a revealing observation. Your submarines sink American tankers carrying 100,000 barrels of oil. They don't cut back on use. They simply order another tanker. This is not war as we understand it. It is industrial math. Beyond the production numbers, intelligence showed new technologies that German industry couldn't equal. At Wright Field in Ohio, Americans tested airplane engines in special chambers that copied conditions at 50,000 feet. Germany's highest test area only reached 30,000 feet. American factories used statistical quality checks. Random checks and statistical studies took the place of checking every single item, greatly speeding up production while keeping quality high. The Norden bomb site, studied from crashed B-17s, showed a level of precision building that was beyond German abilities on a large scale. Dr. Ernst Heinkel, the airplane designer, told his colleagues, "We are artisans building airplanes. They are industrialists making them. We cannot compete with math." Information about American shipbuilding gave more proof of their industrial strength. The United States built 2,110 Liberty ships between 1941 and 1945. While the famous SS Robert E. Peary was built in 4 days and 15 hours as a publicity event, normal production averaged 42 days from the start to launch. By 1943-1944, American shipyards were launching ships at a rate close to 3 every 2 days during their busiest times. German U-boats in the Atlantic reported seeing convoy after convoy of these ships. The strategic meaning was clear. America could replace its losses faster than Germany could cause them. In May 1944, information about the Boeing B-29 Superfortress caused special alarm. Swedish businessmen reported visiting Boeing plants where these super bombers were being made. The details seemed unbelievable. A wingspan of 141 feet, a maximum loaded weight of 140,000 pounds, a bomb load of 20,000 pounds, a range of 3,700 miles, a pressurized cabin for high-altitude flight, and remote-controlled gun turrets. Production had started in 1943, and 3,970 B-29s were eventually built in 4 plants. Germany's most advanced bomber project, the Heinkel He-277, was still just a design on paper. The B-29 was being mass-produced, with hundreds already sent to training units. When shown photo proof, Goering reportedly said, "Nobody can build such airplanes in quantity." But Galland and other realistic officers knew better. As Galland would write in his memoirs, this was not a bluff. It was industrial reality. Captured American airmen, without meaning to, gave information that confirmed this production strength. Their questioning revealed another huge gap: pilot training. American pilots got 250 to 400 hours of flight training before being sent to combat. This included primary, basic, advanced, and transition training. German fighter pilots in 1944 went into combat with about 112 hours, down from 160 hours earlier in the year. By 1945, this would fall to just 50 hours. Fuel shortages meant many never flew their assigned airplane until their first combat flight. Technical Sergeant William Barnes, a B-17 crew chief captured after his bomber was shot down, gave revealing information during questioning. "We were losing about 60 bombers a month over Germany. Boeing alone was building 140 a month. We had more bombers than trained crews." The D-Day invasion in June 1944 showed American material strength on a scale never seen before. Over 5,000 ships, 11,000 airplanes, and 150,000 men in the first wave. Yet Hitler insisted this was America's greatest effort and couldn't be kept up. Speer knew better. Information from Argentina reported American shipyards regularly launching new Essex-class aircraft carriers. Each carrier needed 27,000 tons of steel and carried 90 to 100 airplanes. Germany's only aircraft carrier, the Graf Zeppelin, was still unfinished after 6 years of work. Dr. Karl Krauch, chairman of IG Farben's board, reported through Swiss contacts that Americans made 800,000 tons of synthetic rubber a year, compared to Germany's 120,000 tons. "They have solved the butadiene production problem that held us back," he said. "They share technology. We guard secrets. They increase efficiency through working together." In July 1944, spy photos of Detroit's industrial area showed a concentration greater than the entire Ruhr Valley. Willow Run covered 1,600 acres, Ford River Rouge 2,000 acres, the Chrysler Tank Arsenal 2,100 acres, and General Motors plants over 5,000 acres combined. Photo experts identified hundreds of large factory buildings, thousands of cars in parking lots, dozens of power plants, and rail yards handling over 1,000 freight cars daily. August 1944 was both the high point of German airplane production and Speer's full acceptance that defeat was unavoidable. A complete intelligence summary laid out the stark truth. American production from January to June 1944 included 48,000 airplanes, on track for 96,000 a year, about 14,000 tanks, over 300,000 military trucks, hundreds of Navy ships, and 5.75 million tons of merchant shipping. German production in the same period was 19,800 airplanes, 9,700 tanks and assault guns, 47,000 military trucks, 193 U-boats, and very little merchant shipping. American production was speeding up. German production under heavy bombing was starting to fall. The oil campaign had disastrously cut fuel production. The transportation plan created holdups that left finished weapons stuck at factories. By late 1944, bits of information about a huge American project started reaching German intelligence. While its atomic nature was secret, the industrial size was clear. Reports described plants using massive amounts of electricity. Oak Ridge, Tennessee was using 1/7 of all U.S. electrical output. Peak usage reached 298 Haddam 800 kilowatts. The Americans were putting resources equal to Germany's entire V-weapon program into a single project whose purpose was unknown. A September 1944 study showed that the difference between German and American production was more than just numbers. It was a way of thinking. American production focused on making things simple for large-scale building, using interchangeable parts from different makers, statistical quality checks, and specialized workers. German production focused on complex designs showing engineering skill, unique parts for each maker, individual craftsmanship, and workers as skilled all-rounders. As Speer would later think, "We built airplanes as works of engineering art. They made them as industrial items. Our Me-262 jet fighter was better, but we could only build 20 a month. They would have changed the design for mass production and built 200. By November 1944, even Goering could no longer deny American production strength. The Battle of Leyte Gulf showed American naval production. They sent out more aircraft carriers than Germany had destroyers. At a Luftwaffe meeting, Galland presented serious numbers. American fighters outnumbered Luftwaffe fighters 15-1 over Germany. American pilots came with 400 flight hours. German pilots had 50. American fighters had dependable engines that lasted 400 hours between checkups. German engines managed 25 hours. "We are not facing one Air Force, but several," Galland explained. "The 8th Air Force alone has 3,000 large bombers. Each American Air Force is bigger than our whole Luftwaffe." The Battle of the Bulge in December 1944 gave the final proof. Despite achieving total tactical surprise, German forces were crushed by the American answer. Within days, American forces moved 250,000 men, 50,000 vehicles, and 500,000 tons of supplies to stop the attack. Captured American supply depots showed a richness beyond German understanding, with more supplies in one depot than whole German divisions had. January 1945 brought Speer's most complete study. Swiss banking contacts provided American war bond ads that openly stated production numbers. "Your war bonds have built 317 airplanes, 1940-1945, 86,000 tanks, 2.6 million trucks, 6,500 Navy ships, 2,710 Liberty ships." These numbers, printed in publications, would have been top secrets in Germany. America advertised them to get people to buy bonds. On January 30th, the anniversary of Hitler's rise to power, Speer went to what would be his last big meeting to try to persuade Hitler to ask for peace terms. "Mein Führer, we must see the truth. The Americans make in 1 month what we make in a year." Hitler's answer showed a complete break from reality. Wars are won by will, not by production numbers. On March 18, 1945, Speer sent a note to Hitler stating that Germany's economy would fail within 4 to 8 weeks. The next day, March 19th, Hitler gave his famous Nero decree, ordering the destruction of all German public works. Speer's later response on March 29th argued against this destruction. "The enemy's superiority in weapons and industrial ability has reached levels that make more resistance pointless. The Americans can replace in weeks what we destroy. We cannot rebuild in decades." Hitler accused him of treason and negative talk, but had moved past caring. The production numbers had persuaded him that Germany's defeat was sure since at least mid-1944. In April 1945, as American forces neared Berlin, information kept coming about American production. A captured Fortune magazine showed the car industry's total switch to war production. The entire American car industry, which had made 4.8 million vehicles in 1941, had switched to military making, manufacturing millions of military vehicles, thousands of airplanes, and tens of thousands of tanks. As the Third Reich fell apart, the production numbers told a story that couldn't be argued with. Total U.S. war production, checked figures: 317 military airplanes, 1940-1945, 86,000 tanks, 2.6 million military trucks, 639,000 jeeps, 257,000 artillery pieces, 2.6 million machine guns, 6,500 Navy ships, and 2,710 Liberty ships. German war production: 95,000 airplanes, 1939-1945, 6,800 tanks and self-propelled guns, 345,000 military trucks, 61,000 artillery pieces, 1.2 million machine guns, and 1,171 U-boats. The differences were crushing: 3.2 to 1 in airplanes, 1.35 to 1 in tanks, even with Germany's longer production time, and 7.5 to 1 in trucks. These figures didn't include aid sent to allies. After the war, the United States Strategic Bombing Survey confirmed that German intelligence had actually underestimated American production. The survey noted that German intelligence guesses for U.S. airplane production in 1944 were only 22,440 airplanes. The real number was 96,318, an underestimation of 330%. While Speer's memoirs, Inside the Third Reich, focused mainly on his own successes and his relationship with Hitler, in post-war questionings and interviews, he admitted the crushing nature of American industrial power. In a 1970s interview, he reflected, "By early 1944, I knew for sure that Germany would lose the war. American production of 96,000 airplanes in 1944 was not a temporary burst. It could be kept up forever." Other German leaders confirmed this realization. Field Marshal Erhard Milch testified, "When I found out America made 9,000 airplanes in a single month, I knew the war was lost, Admiral Karl Dönitz testified. When intelligence reported Americans building escort carriers faster than we could build submarines, I knew the Battle of the Atlantic was lost. General Adolf Galland wrote, "Each American pilot we shot down was replaced by 2 more, better trained. We were not facing an enemy, but an avalanche. American technological gains increased their numbers advantage. The proximity fuse made anti-aircraft fire 700% more effective. America made 22 million, while Germany never created the technology. American radar development moved forward on several paths at once, mass-producing thousands of units, while German radar was still made by hand in the hundreds. The turbocharger gave American fighters a key advantage at high altitudes. General Electric made 300,000 during the war. German attempts to copy captured units failed because they lacked the special metals for mass production. The economic difference made a German victory impossible. In 1944, America's gross national product was $210 billion versus Germany's $45 billion. America put 45% toward war production and Germany 65%. Yet, American war production was greater than Germany's total GNP. As historians would later point out, America could lose all of Germany's yearly production in one battle and keep fighting. They could afford to waste what would have destroyed the German economy. America trained 435,000 pilots during the war versus Germany's 57,000. By 1945, American pilots were fighting German pilots who had never fired their weapons in training. Luftwaffe. General Johannes Steinhoff testified, "We sent children to fight professionals. It was not combat but an execution." The knowledge of American production strength created a mental crisis among German leaders that went through expected stages: denial, making excuses, desperation, delusion, and finally, acceptance. This progression changed military strategy, leading to more and more desperate gambles that sped up their defeat. The greatest irony was that American production did what German ideology said was impossible. Racial integration and gender equality in industry turned out to be more efficient than Aryan supremacy. American factories had diverse workforces, voluntarily doing more than German forced labor. In his final years, Speer thought about the lesson. We mixed up military skill with industrial power. We believed racial ideas could overcome real numbers. We thought will could beat production. Every belief was wrong. When I learned they made 96,000 airplanes in 1944, I knew not just that we would lose, but that we had already lost. The war went on for another year, but the result was already decided. World War II was not won on the beaches of Normandy or in the ruins of Berlin. It was won in the factories of Detroit, the shipyards of California, and the airplane plants of Seattle. It was won by workers who never saw fighting but whose industrial power made victory certain. Germany challenged the world's greatest industrial power with ideas and courage. We learned that in modern war, production is strategy, supply lines are tactics, and industrial ability is victory. The Americans knew this from the start. We learned it too late. Speer's realization of American production strength marked the moment when sensible German leaders knew the war's end was already set. The 96,000 airplanes made in 1944 were not just machines, but signs of an industrial system reaching new levels of efficiency. Each B-24 coming off Willow Run's assembly line every 63 minutes showed the systematic strength of democratic industrial planning over totalitarian control. The production war proved that in modern industrial fighting, the factory floor is as important as the battlefield. When Albert Speer saw that America made 96,000 airplanes in 1944, he saw the future, a future where German defeat was certain. The change of American industry from everyday items to weapons of war was the greatest gathering of industrial power in human history. Against this reality, the Third Reich never had a chance. The story of Albert Speer's realization of American production strength is, in the end, a testament to the final power of industrial democracy. In 1944, that nation was without a doubt, overwhelmingly and unbeatable, the United States of America. The 96,000 airplanes made that year were not just signs of American power. They were the proof that totalitarian ambition would always lose to democratic industrial ability.